All right. Good morning. That's a green light. We're ready to rock and roll. How you doing this morning, brother?
I'm good. I'm doing real good since we're actually here instead of
Yeah.
the whoopsie we did yesterday.
we had a we had a rough day on Sunday. It was a good day, but it was a long day, and we got started just way too late yesterday. And said, nah. That's what's cool about not being beholden to a larger network. And much as I love you guys, and we want to do the show, yeah, sometimes dude just tired, yo. Um, and bear with me just a second. I'll get that chat where we can see it, just in case. I jumped the gun just a little bit. I went live before I popped the chat open and hit the screen share button. All right, what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about the Joe Biden campaign. Why are we talking about Joe Biden this morning? Well,
Well, I don't think he ever wanted to be president. And to
I no,
clarify,
I don't think he wanted to be president this time.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think he did, in fact, want to be president, but I don't think that was the purpose of this particular presidential bid.
Now, let's be clear on this. We are talking about a man who's been in politics for a little over 40 years. Right.
Right. Yep,
Um,
because Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and has now run for president 3 times. Um, there's a fact check thing going around that says it's a false statement that he's run 3 times. Well, no, including the current run, he has in fact run 3 times. Um, there's a fourth one that kind of, I think it counts. He made announcements, national announcements, that he intended to run for president in '84, and then he just didn't. Um, that's a pretty old picture of Biden there on his Wikipedia page. I mean, he doesn't look a day over 75 in that one.
No. It's just go to Joe 30330 dot Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Joe doesn't understand how technologies work. But what happened? Why is it that we're positing that Joe's not interested in winning this race? Okay, well, for starters, he's already a 2-time presidential campaign loser. Uh, so right there, Hillary Clinton is not running this time. She's old, she's sick, and she's gotten her ass whipped twice. Right? And she's done better than Biden because she lost the primary the first time, and then she lost the general to Donald Trump. Biden's never made it out of a primary for the presidential seat. Uh,
Well, he's never even had a really particularly strong showing in the primary. Like, it
right.
makes sense that Bernie would come back and take another crack at it because you could argue that he may have actually won the Democrat nomination in 2016
Or the
if he
popular
had been
vote,
cheated.
perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. And he always had a strong core of support. Well, where was Joe Biden's strong core of support? And yet somehow the media declared him the front runner before he ever even announced.
The only reason he's still running, the only reason he hadn't dropped out of this race already, um, you're gonna hear people say that he's sticking around to see how South Carolina goes because Joe Biden does better with black voters than any other current Democrat in the primary. Well, couple things. Uh, the black turnout for the Democratic general is going to be way down this year. I don't necessarily expect that just all of a sudden all the blacks are going to go vote for Donald Trump. Um, there are polls showing between 20 and 30% support for Donald Trump among black voters. But even that, with Biden, he's not sticking around because he thinks that he's going to get a big bump in the polls from uh, black voter turnout in South Carolina. That's an excuse. Here's what I think. The impeachment saga, the Ukraine impeachment, on two articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, could not have occurred if Joe Biden had not declared his candidacy for the president. It's that simple. Joe Biden, on behalf of the Democrat National Committee, joined the presidential race precisely so that the House could use his being a candidate as an excuse to pursue impeachment. Joe Biden was never really running for president. The whole point was the charge that they chose to pursue is that Donald Trump, while investigating corruption in Ukraine, was doing so explicitly to hurt Joe Biden's candidacy for the president. Well, that's ludicrous on the face of it, at several levels. Okay, so the two articles were Article 1, abuse of power, and Article 2, obstruction of Congress. So I'm going to start with the second one. Obstruction of Congress. Okay, neither of these things are crimes. Neither of these are statutory crimes. Just like we talked about before with Russia and collusion, there is a crime which is in the statute. There is a U.S. law against an activity which can be described as being similar to what was called collusion. And that crime is conspiracy to defraud the American people or to defraud the American government. So broadly, conspiracy to defraud. And the fact of the matter is, there was never any evidence that Donald Trump had committed such a crime, and that is why they never alleged the actual crime. At no point did any public officials or major commentators use the language of conspiracy to commit or conspiracy to defraud, because now if you use that language, you're making an actual accusation of a criminal activity. They would never go out and allege a criminal act because there was never any evidence that an activity had occurred. Now, you can go out and say that some people did some stuff all you want. And as long as all you say is some people did some things, then you haven't made a criminal accusation. But to make the accusation, that changes the way that the law has to deal with your claim. Same thing happened here. They never said that Donald Trump did anything of a criminal nature. Now, what they did say is that things that Donald Trump did should be considered crimes. Okay, I'll grant you that for a moment. Let's say that people who have had abortions should have been treated as if they were committing crimes. And I'm going to chase that argument all the way up until it is actually a crime to have an abortion. Alright, I'm going to chase that argument until the law says that a woman who aborts her baby shall face not more than 5 years in prison for the crime of abortion. Okay? Just hypothetically, we get all the way up there and we get that done. That law's on the books. Does that mean that every woman who had an abortion before the law was on the books prosecuted for the crime?
Nope.
It doesn't. So even if the Donald had done exactly the things that he is accused of, the things that he's accused of are not currently crimes, and you cannot go after him retroactively if you make it a crime. Which, to be very clear, holding an impeachment, sham or otherwise, does not suddenly create a crime. It doesn't generate a new law which causes an activity to be a crime. And to repeat my point from just a moment ago, even if it had, then he would have done the act before it was a criminal act. If you were smoking pot before the prohibition on marijuana and did not smoke pot after the prohibition of marijuana, you could not rightly be prosecuted for having broken the law. Not if your actions predate the law.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always stuck out to me was the phone call, the whistleblower, how the CIA operative and Lieutenant Colonel Punch Face were all somehow tangled up in it. And as soon as this phone call happened, um, suddenly that's when all the wheels start to turn. And they didn't even come from anybody that was on the phone call. And we've discussed before how when one president calls another, it's not just one president calling another. There's literally a dozen people on our end listening in on that phone call. There's a
Right.
dozen people on the other president's end listening in on that phone call for a whole bunch of reasons. So somehow a guy that wasn't even on the call ends up being the one to blow the whistle and all of that. That always struck me as really, really odd. Until in discussing this with Chris, it was like, bing, light bulb. Well, okay, we live in a world where Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, so let's just go through the looking glass on that real quick. Well, what if the entire purpose of Joe Biden being declared the front runner before he ever even entered the race? And I think it's pretty clear, based on the first two states, Joe Biden ain't in the front of nothing except for the loser train. So all that happens just so that when this conversation inevitably happens, because at some point the elections in Ukraine were going to resolve. And when the elections in the Ukraine resolved, Trump was going to have contact with the new Ukrainian leader. And the fact of the corruption that was going to include the previous administration to a certain extent would come up. And as soon as those things came up, that's when they knew they were going to make their move. This is an entirely astroturfed situation, in my opinion, because the elections and the investigations, in fact, I dare say that one of the very first things Trump did when he came into the office of the president was to start looking at the situation in Ukraine, because you had so much weird stuff that happened around that. I mean, going all the way back to Manafort in the early 2000s. And and so many other bizarre and corrupt things have happened around there. There's ties to Russia. So it makes sense that he would look into it. And then Joe Biden ran his big mouth about, oh, well, son of a bitch, if they hadn't fired the prosecutor, who'd have thunk it? Corn Pop was a bad dude. So how hard is it to envision a world to say, look, Joe, man, we know you're in the opening stages of dementia. We know that it's probably time for you to just go retire. And maybe you should give your son that smokes so much crack, he set stripper clubs on fire, some personal attention, try and get him to go straight, whatever. But, gosh, you know how much we all hate Donald Trump? Well, here's an idea. There's a whole lot of if baked into this plan. But if the Ukrainian elections go a certain way, and you're in the race after that happens, man, we can impeach Trump, maybe even get rid of him. At the very least, we can taint his presidency and have this be a cloud that hangs over all the Republicans in the 2020 election cycle. And Joe Biden said, wait, what? I need you to repeat the first part again. And so they repeated the first part again. Joe Biden understood as well as he could what was going on and said, yeah, Donald Trump was a bad dude, is a bad dude, and got into the race and provided cover, the excuse. Because if this whole thing happened and Joe Biden's not in the race, and I want to stress this, nobody questions it, not even a little bit.
Right.
And I'll also point out that if Trump wants to use the leverage of the federal government against his political opponents, why has he not done anything about Bernie, who appears to have genuine popular support? And man, some of his supporters are terrifying. They're pro re-education camp, pro gulag, pro dissolution of private property. I mean,
terrorists.
like full-blown communist wet dream. It'd be really easy to find excuses to go after Bernie and his supporters, but Trump hasn't done that. And same for Warren and Klobuchar and all these other people. And yet, somehow, Joe Biden, the one who is proving himself to be the weakest of the remaining presidential candidates, that's the one Trump decided to risk not just the presidency, but potential prison time for him and his family over. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wouldn't buy that if it came with a ham sandwich and a Coke. Like, you lose me there.
Well, and all of the speculation leading into the claim that the first article for abuse of power presupposes that Trump is especially concerned about Biden, just like you say, and at no point during the hearings, at no point during the questioning, the witnesses, all of that, nobody ever asked, have you heard, has anybody heard Donald Trump say that he's worried about running against Joe Biden? Because I guarantee you nobody's going to answer that question in the affirmative. Right? It's not even whether or not Trump actually is concerned about Biden running. Obviously, he's not. I mean, you look at the very, very weak showing that Biden has given us, and I mean, what do you do with that? He's a weak sauce candidate.
He's done poorly in the debates. He's done poorly in the first couple of primaries that we've had. Just speaks for itself.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Why? And I think the media was in on it. You know, you wonder, does the DNC run the media or does the media run the DNC? Because I sincerely believe that a large part of this math revolves around the media declaring him the front runner before he ever even got into the race, because that's part of it. Oh, well, he's afraid of Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's the front runner. Plays a little better than he's afraid of Joe Biden, and at best he comes in third in Iowa, but actually it was fourth. Whoops. That's not the same thing at all.
Well, in fairness, Iowa's a whole big weird bowl of what the hell happened here. Iowa went sideways quick.
Yeah, and apparently it's going to happen in Nevada as well.
Yeah. But I mean, let's not forget we got the information from Lev Parnas, who was apparently trying to help the Democrats, but he comes out and he's like, oh yeah, Trump tried to fire Yovanovitch and was talking about looking into Ukraine 2 years ago. It's like, and you can almost hear the breath of the Democrats. It's like, dude, shut up!
What the hell is wrong with you?
If he was trying to look into Ukrainian corruption before Joe Biden was running for president, then that means that's not the reason he was looking into corruption. Oh! There it is.
And there it is.
And
So,
and Lev Parnas, um, okay, Rudy Giuliani is bombastic, and you gotta kind of take him with a grain of salt. But Parnas has showed himself through these activities to be an absolutely unreliable source. I mean, let's be perfectly fair about this. Look at that little rat. I mean, he just looks like he looks like a liar.
I still think Vindman has a more punchable face.
I agree. I agree entirely. But
But yeah,
this guy Parnas, in his testimony that Trump was looking into Ukraine, um, almost 2 years before Biden announced as president, that shatters the whole narrative to establish the abuse of power charge to begin with. And of course, without Article 1, abuse of power, there can be no Article 2, obstruction of Congress, which, by the way, also not a crime.
so yeah, there you go. We've gone full blown Alex Joner territory on the Brushfire Mind.
That's right, clockwork elves and the whole nine, because basically, I mean, we've said it a couple times, but the takeaway here is Joe Biden is not running for president. Joe Biden established a presidential campaign explicitly for the purpose of giving cover to a non-starter, non-criminal accusation charge for the first article of impeachment. If the Democrats had been serious, and God, and the whole impeachment thing, they never intend to or expected to impeach him, or they would have alleged a crime. Um, and the reason they didn't allege crime is because there was no evidence of any crime. They said something about bribery. They said something about what was the other one? They mentioned 2 or 3 different crimes in all the talks leading up to the actual impeachment thing, but they never offered any evidence that there was actually bribery. The whole quid pro quo, that's not going to go anywhere because it's to say that the phrase quid pro quo automatically equals corruption is to say that purchasing cheeseburgers is a corrupt activity. It's nonsensical. It's anyway. So that's all I got for you today. Joe Biden is not running for president. He created a campaign explicitly for the purpose of supporting the impeachment. And that's important to understand because what I am saying is that the entire impeachment was contrived out of whole cloth because they decided to impeach. We know this, that the Democrats decided to impeach the president before he was even sworn in. Before the inauguration, the Democrats decided they've just been hanging around with an impeachment waiting for a charge. And when it became very clear that no criminal charge which rises to the bar of high crimes and misdemeanors would present itself for them to impeach upon, they invented something that isn't a charge which rises to that level and then attempted to argue that it does.
Yeah, this is your modern Democrat Party. Going to use a 70-year-old man with dementia as a sacrificial lamb. Bravo. That's class. And you want to talk about Trump and the way he acts. But that's all I got, man.
Yep, me too. All right, y'all have a good day. Be safe out there. It's time to go to work.
All right, man. Later.
Hey, tomorrow I want to actually accuse the Democrats of a crime in the production of the impeachment.